Welcome back to another episode of Survive the Hunt. I'm Jake Hacker. With me is my good buddy, Bill Hoffman. Bill, how are you doing today?
So weird. Why are you calling me Bill?
What am I supposed to call you? Billy? William? William C?
It doesn't matter. I answer to
WC?
them all. No, that's pretentious, but I'd really appreciate it if you call me WC. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, W. Well, hey, last week we talked about like all the new and exciting stuff that was going on in our lives and the 4 deer we've killed between the two of us and my new baby and all
The
that
four
stuff.
bucks. The $4 we've killed.
$4 we've killed with over. Now, if we add your antler, if we add the inches of your antlers into this.
Yeah, we should do that.
Okay.
I'll take pride in that.
I haven't done the exact math, but it's going to put us somewhere around 540 inches so far for the year between the two of us.
That's impressive. That's
yeah.
250 inches each, 270 inches each, really.
You know, I'm a team player, and if you would have told me like 3 weeks ago I'd killed 270 inches of antler already, I'd have been all for it. But
yeah, right.
Yeah. But no, man, like all the exciting stuff, and we forgot to talk about the single most exciting thing that's happened since the last time we talked. Big Ten football. It's back.
Big Ten football is back.
Real football. For all you knuckleheads in the South, Big Ten football, we play offense and defense. And it's actually exciting football. I'm pumped for it. December 12th, the Ohio State University versus Michigan, who's going to be like 3-4 by the time that comes around. I'm excited.
You notice me not disagreeing with you on the 3 and 4, right?
I know you're not, because it's just like the Michigan mindset. I worry about how much that's creeped in to Michigan. Like for the sake of Ohio State, I want you guys to be 7-0 when we play. But I don't think that's realistic.
No, I don't see it. Again, we talked about this, but my prediction was a loss to Minnesota, a loss to Wisconsin, a loss to Penn State, a loss and beating you guys. That would put it. No, I'm kidding. It was
stupid prediction.
Yeah, I'd put us at 4-4. Yeah, I thought it was funny. It was pretty telling when you look at how each school published their schedule.
Yeah.
Did you notice a difference?
I didn't actually look at this, so enlighten me.
So Ohio State published Ohio State versus someone on the December 19th.
Right.
For the Big Ten championship. Michigan just listed it as the Big Ten championship.
They're not going to be involved.
Right?
No.
So I was like, that's fitting. That's what these programs should do. That's right. That's on par for both their characters.
I can't believe I didn't see that. That's funny.
Yeah. And maybe what I was looking at wasn't an official one or whatnot, but it was like, yeah, that makes sense.
I know, like, before the schedule was posted, before we knew who we were playing, it was like Ohio State versus Ohio State football's back, or Ohio State versus it doesn't matter, football's back.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel. I'm excited to see real football.
Yeah.
Real football come back. Still got a month to go, but
I've been enjoying the NFL. So, I play in a couple fantasy leagues and whatnot, but I like college way better.
Well, I'm a Bengals fan, so there is no enjoying the NFL. There's just watching Joe Burrow's career be ended, like, second game of the season. Because, dude, he gets hit 15 times a game. Like, it doesn't matter how. He's a great quarterback. But if you get hit 15 times a game for the first year of career, I bet by the end of this year, Joe Burrow will have been knocked down more times than Tom Brady has his entire career.
Yeah, but Tom Brady is the greatest of all time versus some scrub that came out of Ohio and couldn't hack it, so he went down to Louisiana or something like that.
I agree with you. The point is, though, that if Tom Brady played for the Bengals, he would have only made it like 2 years because he'd have been broken in half.
Well, we'll find out about that as far as how good Tom Brady is now this year a little bit. But he's older. He's older and slower. So, have
you ever seen that video of like the 100-year-old World War II vet playing flag football with all the young guys? He's running. Yeah. Somebody posted that the other day, and it said, actual video of Tom Brady scoring his first touchdown as a Buccaneer.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Anyway, this is not a football podcast.
Football is
not
back.
what we're talking about.
Football is often called the hot potato. It's often called the pigskin. It's often called the spud. Do people call it that in Ohio?
Mm-mm.
No, we just play hot potato.
No, we don't have to make up stupid names for football because we actually play football.
Oh my God! Shut up! You introduced this episode then.
Okay.
I was gonna make a plant joke.
Well, no, I want to hear it now. Tell me the plant.
No, it wasn't good. Oh, potatoes are plants. We're talking about plants. Go.
Yeah, it's not very good.
No, it wasn't.
Today, we're talking about plants, not potatoes, because they're not helpful at all to what we're discussing. However, we're going to be discussing plants that you would find in the woods, in the field. What, are potatoes helpful? You're looking at me like I should be counting potatoes in this.
No, I just thought of a joke that you'd have to edit out, so I held it in.
Okay, well, I want to hear that one later, too.
Okay. It's about koala bears, just so you know.
I mean, for the sake of the podcast, I feel like I at least need to know how you got to koala bears out of that. We'll edit it out if it's too bad, but I really need to hear this.
Why are koala bear? I'm gonna make it podcast appropriate.
Yeah, it's not podcast. We'll edit that out. We'll just bleep.
It's just not funny. It doesn't need to be.
It's not funny. You're right. We'll edit that out for the sake of your comedy career.
All right.
I'll just bleep the punchline and everybody can figure it out themselves.
For the record, you made me tell that.
I did, and I'm glad I did because I needed to get that out of the way. Anyway, we're talking about plants that are going to help you this hunting season, whether they help you when you're a hunting deer, or whether they help you when you're tracking deer, or if you would need them in some kind of first aid survival situation, something like that. So, all that being said, we're talking about plants for deer season, not food plots, just natural growing in the wood stuff. So, Billy, when I say that, I have a feeling that we come from very different backgrounds on this. You know, with the survival stuff for me has played a lot into let me back up, I guess like the last couple of years, I've really spent a lot of time in herbal remedies and learning natural plants and really being like hyper observant of what natural plants are in my area. Whereas you're, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, just going to be coming from more of a hunting background, just from.
I have never used an herbal remedy, even if it's like a store-bought one.
Yeah.
I can't think like my wife will buy like essential oils, and I'm like, I never heard of essential oils before 2016, so they must not be that essential.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
You know, like, oh, it's all natural. Really? Then why'd you have to get 7 tons of it and compress it into like I don't want to go on a rant about, but that's like the extent of my herbal knowledge is herbal essence shampoo.
Okay. Well, that's exactly where, judging by your hairstyle, that's exactly where I thought your herbal prowess would come from. So I guess backing up to that then, like when I say we're talking plants in the woods that are going to help you kill deer, what comes to mind for you? What are you thinking?
I think the number one plant that can be found in the woods that's going to help you kill deer is milkweed.
Okay, I know where you're going with this because I know who you're getting that from, but go ahead and expound on it.
How do you know where I'm getting it from? I've used it for decades.
I know where you're getting it from.
Okay, so milkweed is
I know everything, Billy.
There's a plant that has a pod on it that is about 3 inches, and on the inside of the pod it has a seed. It's basically a seed head, but the seed head it's a little brown seed and it's got white puffs on it, and that the white puffs catch the wind and they float, and that's how it repropagates itself, right? So what I do as far as using it for hunting is we take those pods, and it's called milkweed because in the pod itself it does have like a white sticky sappy liquid. Generally when I pluck them, I'll just let them dry out. You know, it only takes a day or two. You let them dry out. I'll open the pod, take all the white seeds, and I brush the actual seeds off, the brown part off, and I'm just left with the seed heads. Those go into a pouch, and they float on the wind for hundreds of yards if need be. That is nature's absolute best wind detector. It is free. It is visible. It doesn't go bad. It doesn't rot. It lasts forever. And, I always laugh when you go on TV and you see the guys with the stupid smoke puffer.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, first of all, the grenade thing, it's cool. And it works, cool. Right?
Sure.
But that only tells you what the wind is doing where you're at.
Right.
Okay. That puff of smoke, or even the guy with like the talcum powder, that does not tell you what thermals are doing. It does not tell you where your wind is going after it leaves 3 feet away from you. Now, if you're hiking up a mountain and you're going to elk and you want to check the general wind direction, that's great. Right. But in the whitetail woods, so much more comes into play when it comes to playing the wind, that I think milkweed, above any food, above anything else as far as hunting, knowing your wind and paying attention to it is going to kill you more deer than anything else. And again, it's free. It's the best. You're not making, it's not a consolation prize because you're not paying for it. It's the best. There's right. Nothing that works better than that. There are some other things that work. Cattail heads work pretty much kind of in the same vein. They're just a little bit messier and a little bit harder to deal with. But in a pinch, if I didn't have milkweed, I'd just go grab a cattail head and you can pluck it off and it'll float just in it. That's the seed pod that's doing the exact same thing.
Right.
So yeah, that is my number one tip when it comes to plants in the woods, and it will help you kill deer, is knowing your wind.
For people who aren't familiar with milkweed, I think a lot of people, like in Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, like it's one of those plants that in school, like when you're in like first or second grade, you bring it for show and tell, and everybody's like, oh, that's what milkweed is. But if you were going to explain what milkweed is and where to find it to somebody who's not familiar with it, what would your advice be for identifying it or where to find it?
So it's one of those things that it grows, and where it grows, there's a lot of it. You're not going to find one or two plants. And I think that's the nature of the milk, because each one of those pods, right, each plant will have, up to 15, 20 pods. Each one of those pods is loaded with seed heads. So when basically the plant dies off in the fall, right? It'll open up and the wind does its job and it takes those seed heads. Well, that's why there's so much of it in general area, where when you do find it, you find a big patch of it, right? Okay. Because it doesn't go that far as far as spreading. And where you're going to find that is generally going to be, roadside ditches, places that don't get mowed, big open fields. Think of a place, like look at a field and say, I bet you that field has butterflies, and there's going to be milkweed in that. It's just it's going to be full sun. It's not down in a swamp. It's not really in a shaded area. It's going to be a full sun area. Think of like prairie ditches. But there's, anywhere in that prairie area that's going to collect water. So if there's a drainage basin or something like that, that's where you're going to find it. That's why you find a lot of like highway rest stops, the areas that don't get mowed. There's a lot of it there because it's full sun. And the cool thing is it's going to be there year after year after year after year. My milkweed spot is at my kid's school.
Yeah, cool.
It's right in the bus loop. It's right there. I hop out. I go up there on a weekend, and I grab 5 or 6 pods per year, and that's more than enough for me. Yeah. So yeah, that's and the thing, I do think that for those of us in the Midwest, I think it is a butterfly food. I think like the monarch butterfly has something to do with the life cycle of a monarch butterfly, which are the orange and black butterflies. I don't know exactly what it does in the life cycle. I've just heard that over the years.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I've just heard that over the years. I don't know the validity of that, but yeah. So generally, as far as looking at the leaf structure, it's a column plant. It grows like straight up. It's usually about maybe 2.5 feet tall, kneecap. If it's real tall ones, will be at your hip or your waist, but they don't get huge. It's pretty evident. It's almost, the pods almost look like immature bananas, and like green short little bananas, and they kind of open the same way like a banana does. And once you find it, you found it, and you really know where it's at. And then cattails, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know about cattails, maybe you're out west in the mountains, but anywhere from Michigan to Florida, we got cattail swamps, and you can pick those. And we can talk about that later, but those are edible too. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think one more thing on the milkweed, like where I get mine, because I do harvest a little bit, 1 or 2 pods every year, not a ton, and usually it's by chance. But if you told me I had to go find some right now, I'd just drive down the highway and look off in the ditch. And
yep,
yeah, it's a big leaf, alternating leaf plant. You rip a leaf off and you get that milky substance come out. If there's not pods on there to identify, but. No, that's a really good one. And, something else milkweed is good for, you might not have known this, helpful tip of the day is if you take the roots and you boil them down into like a paste and make a tincture with them, they're probably the best plantar's wart treatment that's out there.
Really?
Really, really. Yep.
Never dealt with the plantar's warts or anything, but.
I had them when I was a kid, but not anymore, thanks to the healing power of milkweed. Of milkweed. No, and you mentioned cattail as well. I like milkweed for wind direction. I don't really care much about wind direction personally when I hunt. It's not like a deciding factor for me.
Really?
But yeah, I don't care about the wind.
Like thermals, wind, you don't?
Nah, don't care.
That's because you have dumb deer.
It is not because we have dumb deer. It's because you can't control where the deer are going to move. The wind changes 74 times a day, and wind direction doesn't matter. The number one thing that kills you with wind direction is convection currents, and that's what
the thermal currents, right? Yeah.
No, convection. I'm talking strictly convection, not thermal. So thermal.
So you mean like on a hillside when in the morning the scent goes down, and in the evening it goes up.
Well, that's thermals. You're talking thermals there.
Right, okay,
it's
so
rising and falling. Yeah, so convection is, so if you know how a convection oven works, right, you got your heat source and then a fan that just swirls the air around in there. So the way convection current works, number one reason whitetail hunters get busted in the woods, convection currents. And I bet 99% don't know what they are. But if you've got a wind blowing at your face and you're like, man, this is a great wind, this is awesome, and you're sitting up in a cedar tree or you've got a hillside behind you, what happens is that wind's going to hit you in the face, and it'll a lot of time bounce off the tree that you're sitting in and then just tumble right back the direction it came. That's basically what a convection current is. It can do the same thing off a rock wall, do the same thing if you're sitting against the hillside. That wind's going to bounce. So I guess to say that wind direction doesn't matter to me, it's because I'm really, really finicky about my scent control.
As am I. Yep.
Right. So I think when you play your scent control correctly, you don't worry about the wind so much. And the wind's not, it's just like the more that I've tried to hunt the wind, the less impact I realize that the wind actually has on my hunt. It's just something the old snooty guys like to say, like, the best scent control is hunting the right wind. Well, it's impossible to hunt the right wind if you want to hunt where the deer are going to be. So I like knowing the wind direction. Don't get me wrong. I constantly check wind direction, especially out west. But if we're talking whitetail, I check it in the stand frequently to understand what it's doing. But I don't know that it dictates anything at all about my deer hunt.
So for those convection currents that you're talking about, would the milkweed pick those up?
Yes and no. The problem with the milkweed or cattail is you throw that little milkweed pot out there and it floats, and it usually goes up because there's usually some kind of thermal going on. So it goes up, and say you've got the wind in your face. Well, that means that milkweed pod's going right back behind you, and it's generally going to get stuck in a tree. It's going to get stuck on the hillside, and you're not going to see it bounce back forward.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I absolutely do pay attention to the wind, and especially now being a mobile hunter, I'm not going to let it stop me from hunting an area, but I will pick a tree based on it.
Yeah.
Like this, the morning when I shot my buck, where I added to our 500 inches that we talked about last week. I chose that. There's 6 or 7 trees I could have been in and shot that deer. I chose that tree in particular because of the wind direction. So it does definitely come into play. Now, I'm not a it's too blink to hunt guy. I'm not that guy.
Right.
It's too windy to hunt. It's too wet to hunt. It's too hot to hunt. It's too cold. I'm not that guy. Mainly because when I get time to hunt, I want to go hunt, right? We live busy lives. So I'm going to go, right? So I'm never like, oh, the wind's out of the east. I guess I'll sit at home, or whatnot. I'll just tailor my experience to what is happening. So I guess I do pay more attention to it than maybe you do. But
I mean, it's to your example, though, like where you're saying there's 6 different trees you could have killed that deer out of. If I'm in the woods and I'm where you're at, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hunt the best tree for the wind. I'm not going to give it zero thought, I shouldn't say, but kind of like you're saying, it's not going to change my mind where I hunt as far as a particular location. I'm still going to hunt the same funnel. I'm going to hunt the same field edge, wherever the deer move, and that's where I'm going to be. And so my experience of all the big bucks I've killed, there's been very few of them where the wind's been correct when I killed them.
Yeah. I mean, you're always going to get a crosswind, or you want him to have. We could do a whole podcast on wind and what I call the confidence wind that kills bucks or kills deer in general. Like actually, on my doe hunt, I had a confidence wind. It was easy, but I also knew where they wanted to be, so it worked out good. But I will bring up this. If you guys are listeners to the show and you listen to every episode, you know that I have a habit of the noise, Jake.
Don't do it. I know it's happening.
Of mentioning other podcasts.
No.
And it doesn't really bug him that much. It's kind of just a joke between him and I. And I'm not going to mention any other podcasts by name, at least this episode. But I did learn a lot about wind from other podcasts. And and for those of you on the video podcast. Okay.
You didn't learn anything about wind from that podcast, I'm positive.
The only thing I learned from that podcast is blowing wind. But anyway, here we go. So I'm going to ask you the same question. When it comes to the hunting aspect, what plants do you find to be the key indicators to success?
Well, the number one plant that I look for in Ohio, Kentucky, really anywhere in the heartland of the U.S. is vine. The big vines that just hang out of the trees. You don't know where they come from, where they end.
So what's neat about this is when I said milkweed, you're like, I know where you're going with this, or I know. Yeah. And so you're saying vine. I think I know where you're going with this, but explain. I'm excited.
Okay. All right. So where I'm going with this is deer centralizing. So whether, we can bait here in Ohio, and it's a great tool to kind of inventory and keep tabs of what your deer are doing. But you can't always attract those deer into a bait pile or a food source or whatever. But with vines, a lot of times you'll get a natural hanging vine. And most of the time it ends up being horizontal, unfortunately, but it'll hang over a trail, maybe hip high, neck high, waist high. And that is my number one place to put a trail camera, because deer use those for communication. I mean, it's their scent markers. Some people call them scrapes, some people call them mock scrapes, but it's not really what a scrape is. It's just a communication point for deer. If I'm hunting an area where a vine's not hanging where I want it to hang, I'll go cut a 2 or 3 foot section of vine and hang it where I want it from a piece of rope. And every deer in that area will visit that vine. If a buck walks by it within 20 yards and it's, he's not chasing a doe or making a beeline somewhere, he will stop and hit that vine. If I was going in the woods and I'm going to throw a camera out, I want to hunt one place, I'm looking for those vines. And I guess I'm kind of not answering the question. You say, what's the number one thing? There's not really a number one thing, but it's the first thing that I look for when hunting or scouting a new property. And it's something really like in the last 5 years, I really started using a lot of those vines for scraping, for vertical scrapes, but really just for inventory and communication of deer. It just seems like no matter where in the country I'm at, or really what type of deer species I'm hunting, if there's a vine that deer can use to communicate, they seem to do that, and it seems to be a really, really valuable plant for that reason.
There's actually, I've seen a product out there. It's called Scrape FX or something like that. It's actually a fake vine that you hang. The idea is to hang it above a mock scrape. I've never actually gone out and cut a vine. Here's the thing: I am so freaking allergic to poison ivy. It's like anything that's like, oh, vine or plant. Like I tend not to touch it,
Right.
Even though I know like most of like the big vines and stuff aren't poison ivy or oak or sumac or whatnot. But I have also seen people hang rope, like a thick rope. Have you ever tried that or know anyone that's had success with it?
So I guess we'll start with the rope. So rope's a terrible thing to hang. It doesn't work as good as a natural vine, but also it's a good way to tangle up a deer's antlers and hang a deer over your mock scrape. And I've seen that several times in Ohio where I've seen them use steel cable before. And they'll hang a steel cable there because it hangs heavier than rope. But the worst thing with rope is it just blows too much in the wind. It's not heavy enough or stout enough to really hang there.
Right now, hold the oils from their glands and all that in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it soaks it up, but what a deer does is it's typically rubbing its preorbital gland. Like that's their main communication, which is right at the front of the eye, and it needs some pressure to rub that against. If it's just a free floating rope, it's not going to do real well. The artificial vines I have used and have had horrible luck with them. I've tried some of the artificial scents and all that, but you just don't need it. It's just gimmicky for the most part. You just go out there and cut a vine, hang it over a trail. If you want to make a mock scrape, underneath it, great. If not, it doesn't matter. The deer are going to use that to communicate with, but just a plain vine and let nature do its thing on it. You don't need.
Yeah, because it starts as a visual attractant and eventually ends up as glandular odor or whatever you want to say. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm actually going to do that this year if I come across it. So when you say the vines, you're talking about the ones that are, I don't know, 2 inches in diameter, maybe 1.5 inches in diameter, like a thick rope, right?
Yeah, like Tarzan would be swinging through the jungle on them, like that kind of vine. But the part you want to use, you don't want to use anything much bigger than 1 inch in diameter.
Okay.
You want to use a small chunk of it.
And then, just because I don't know, do those carry like poison sumac or like, do those carry like stuff that's going to make me itch?
No, not in my experience. I'm super allergic to poison ivy, and I've never had a problem. However, I'm also not handling anything that I think whitetail scent's going to be on. So,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I'm wearing rubber gloves, and I'm probably never actually physically touching the vine with my skin.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yep.
Okay. And then will you fasten it to will you cut it all the way down and fasten it to a tree? Do you try to?
I'll tell you what I did the other day. There was there actually wasn't vine where I was hunting, and I drove to another hunting property, and I cut like a 3-foot section of vine, and then I took 2 climbing sticks with me into the rope, or into the woods, and I ran a rope about 15 feet up a tree, across the trail to another tree, and then from the middle of that rope, I hung another rope, which is what my vine was tied onto.
Oh, okay.
And it's hanging down about hip high right over the trail, and the deer just hammer it. I mean, every deer that walks through there spends a minute or two on it.
Are you using you mentioned putting trail cameras on it.
Yeah.
Are you using it for inventory, or is this something you would hunt over?
If I've got a hanging vine anywhere, there's a tree stand within bow shot of it for sure.
Okay.
I do have cameras on them. Right now, I actually don't have any cell cams on them. I've got everything on video mode. I've got some 4K video trail cameras up on them. And, I'm really trying to take this year. We kind of talked about it last year, on last week's episode, really studying deer behavior and how they react to some different variables I'm throwing at them. And that's one of the things on these vines is doing a little different stuff with the placement, with the height. And I like having that video to go back and watch how the deer are reacting to it.
Perfect. All right. So my number one was milkweed. Yours was vines. Where are we going now?
So again, like my number one, that's the first one that I look for.
The first one,
it's not, not the most important.
Right. I mean, we're still talking about the hunting aspect, not necessarily the medicinal aspect.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things kind of they go hand in hand. The thing is, like, when you start learning medicinal values of plants, animals have known a lot of this stuff for a long time. It's like when your dog has an upset stomach and he goes out in the backyard and eats grass. Like, nobody taught the dog that that's what he should be eating for, to help his stomach, but it's what he does. And deer do the same thing. They know what their body needs and how chemicals and medicines play into it. I have no idea with deer, but I do know that they will eat a lot of the plants that I might use medicinally as well in different types of the year. But the next plant that I'm looking for in the woods is briars and woody browse, because these are mid to late fall food sources. So I'm looking at thorn bushes. I'm looking at trees that have fallen over, and they get the little sprouts coming off the trunk. A lot of guys will hinge cut trees if they're managing
a hinge cut tree.
Yeah. But if you find briars and woody browse in the bedding area in March, April, May, there's probably not going to be any deer on it. But come mid-November, late November, December, the deer really start hitting that stuff hard. That's what they need in their diet, and it's a really good food source for them. So that's probably the next one I'm looking for in the woods as far as hunting goes.
Nice. I think my next one is kind of similar to yours, and it's food. And I think we can't talk about whitetail food and not talk about acorns, right? It's quite obvious. It's so obvious that I almost don't even want to talk about them. Yeah, acorns. Okay, let's talk about something else. With the people, every other podcast video in the world talks about acorns. When it comes to acorns, I'll just say this: know the difference between reds and whites. There are pin oaks, there are black oaks, there are swamp oaks. They're all either red or white. They're just different. They're just different parts of the family. And what the real reason you need to know is because white oaks are going to be your early season food source, and the red oaks are going to be your later season. Of course, different deer have different tastes, and a lot of these things grow intermittent with each other. The reason is acorns have a toxic, or not toxic, have an acid in them called tannin, and it's basically when you drink wine, and wine has like that aftertaste. That's the tannins, and the reason wine has that is it actually comes from the oak barrels that wine is stored in before as it's fermenting. So that's why it has that. But yeah, that's the same chemical reaction. And deer don't really like the tannins, and what kills tannins a lot of times is the colder weather. So a lot of times the red oak acorns have the higher tannin count, and that's why after it gets cold, they've been sitting on the ground and they've been washed out and kind of bleached out and whatnot, that the deer moved them as a food source. What also might come into play is by then the white ones, they've already eaten them all up. So It might just be what's left. So, okay. So there, I don't want to go, I don't want to go on this big oak tree thing because it's common sense, right? As far as hunters go. Is there anything else you want to mention about oaks? Because I'm actually going to go to a different tree.
No, I mean, with oaks, man, it's like, in Ohio, we like fried catfish. Like, that's probably the most common fish in Ohio. And if you go to Michigan, I don't know what you guys eat, like trout or salmon or
yeah.
So
you have two. You either have panfish people, or you have inland lake people, or you have Great Lakes people.
Right. So it's like, everybody's got different taste, and I've got deer herds down here that like white's better, that like red's better, that like pin's better. Dude, it changes year to year depending on how the tree grows. You just got to keep an eye and see which acorns start disappearing
Yeah.
fastest. That's
So okay, we talked about oak trees. I'm just gonna mention another tree because I feel it's an undervalued tree to outdoorsmen, and it's sugar maple. It's maples. It's sugar maples. The trees that make the little helicopter things that fly down. Those trees, once fall hits, so we're gonna be talking it where I live anyway. Maybe about October 21st. The farther north you go, it may be a little bit earlier, but definitely about October 20th, all the way through November. As soon as those leaves turn that bright yellow, bright red, the sugar content inside those leaves is so high that they are just candy to a deer, and they will hammer those leaves. You will walk in, especially in like big forest areas, if there's no crops.
yeah.
If you're a hardwood area where there is no crops, every maple tree that's a big maple tree that has branches hanging down, they'll be picked clean 6-7 foot high, and those deer are just getting up on their hind legs and like pulling them, and they'll pull. It's kind of crazy. They almost like a giraffe. They'll bite it high and pull down and scrape with their teeth and just clear the limb, and it leaves a really good signpost too, where you can see, if you see one of those sugar maple trees, and they're such a pretty tree, so they kind of stand out.
Right.
So if you can find like a sugar maple tree or a row of them, maybe in like a big pine thicket, you need to be checking those to see if they're scraped, and if all those are scraped, or you can see them pawing at the ground, like you don't see a lot of the leaves on the ground and stuff. It's generally a pretty good indication that they're getting fed on right there. Again, if they have a gigantic cornfield or a bean field or something like that, they're probably going to go to the other source first. But where I hunt in hardwoods, those sugar maples are a big time food source.
I like it. Yeah, we've got a lot of them down here too, and it's a very popular logging tree down here. Anytime people get soft maples, it's probably the most valuable tree to grow here because they grow so fast, and then they'll come in and timber cut them, but they leave those tops on the ground, and the deer just eat them to pieces, man.
Yeah, and especially when they're dropping tops, man, it just creates such good bedding. They'll just get in there and lay down in them, and they don't have to go far to eat.
Yep. Yeah, my first spot and stalk buck that I ever killed, whitetail in Ohio, was actually bedded in a maple treetop when I shot it. So glassed it up and saw that. So yeah, for sure they like to bed them. But no, that's cool, man. Yeah, it's the tree knowledge is, man. There's people who can go out and like identify every tree in the woods. I'm not that guy.
I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy at heart. I just not put the educational time into it.
There's just so many like lookalikes and varieties, and you've got to see them like in all 4 seasons to really be able to truly like learn how to identify them whenever you see them. But
and here's a little cheat code, and it's not perfect, but man, with cell phone technology and everything we got nowadays, you can take a picture of a leaf, and you can take a picture of bark. You can take a picture of pretty much any plant, right? And then if you have a Google phone, it's already built into the camera. If you have an iPhone, what you have to have is like a Google Drive setup, and just have it set up so that your images go to your Google Drive automatically. And you just pop open that Google Drive, and there's this thing called Google Lens, and it scans that picture that you just took, and it finds stuff that matches it, and it's pretty darn accurate. It'll get you pointed in the right direction a lot of times. So if you're ever wondering, is this a red oak? Is this a white oak? Is it a pin oak? Is it a cluster oak? Blah, blah, blah. Or pine trees. It's really good with pine trees. Is this a red oak? Or I'm sorry, a red pine, a white pine, jack pine, all that. That's probably one of the better tips I can give people. That Google Lens thing's pretty fun to play with.
It is good. You just have to triple check anything it tells you, because I've used Google Lens, and there's an app called Plant Snap, and another one called Picture This. I've used all 3 of those on identifying.
I've used all 3 of them as well. Yep.
Identifying edible plants, and there's just so many that are close to each other And I found that it's not very to eat something or to use it medicinally. I would not rely on any of those three to identify.
I would totally agree.
For deer
hunting. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, go for it.
I'm talking about deer hunting or even education. What's the word I'm looking for? Curiosity. That's the word I'm looking for. Curiosity. A perfect example is I'm shooting this 3D shoot and we're walking through and there's this weird fungus growing up and it's like just this white, it's coming up. It's like a white hook and it's hanging down. I'm like, what the heck is this? I had never seen it before anywhere. And it was all over at this club. So I took a picture of it and I think it was called Indian pipe. And it's actually not a fungus. It's a plant. And it just looks like a fungus. And I read all about it and learned all about it. It was super cool. And I was like, I had never, lived in Michigan all my life and I've never noticed this, So, for curiosity, for stuff like that, it's cool, a cool way to keep yourself. But yeah, don't use it for mushrooms or anything that you're actually going to eat. That's just bad news.
Yeah, that's not good. But all right, well, moving on, I'm going to go a little different direction. I'm going to go back to some roadside plants here. One of my absolute favorite plants that I've learned in the last couple years is mullen. So mullen it's another ditch plant. It doesn't grow a stalk.
Can you spell that?
No. Mullein.
Okay.
Mullen. It's a green, woody, stalky plant, a real broad base of leaves that get a little smaller as they go up. The plant will get 3 foot tall, and it'll have a real seed pod cluster flower up at the top. Looks like a bunch of little peppercorns or something at the top of the plant. So this plant, it's one of my favorite friction fire plants. That's when I started using this plant. You strip the leaves off, let it dry out, and it's a great hand drill because it's perfectly straight most of the time. I've got one that's almost 5 feet long that I picked this year, and I can crank an ember out pretty quick with that. But very good for survival on the hand drill side. But I also discovered it's an excellent mosquito repellent when you're hunting. So
really?
Yeah, if you're out in the East Coast where you're hunting in the swamps and you get a lot of mosquitoes, you're bear hunting, you're down south somewhere, our mosquitoes start dying off here as soon as it starts to frost. But the leaves are very pollinous, and the stalk is as well. So you can actually take a leaf off and rub it on your exposed skin or rub it on your shirt or your jacket, and it will leave a little pollen residue there. And this is something I just kind of came across by chance playing with the friction fire stuff, but I noticed that mosquitoes will not bite you if you're covered in that pollen. It's just off-putting to them. And it's not scentless, but it's a natural scent. So, in a hunting scenario, it's not something that's going to get you winded because it does grow pretty much everywhere. Just a natural thing. Coincidentally, it's actually what one of the main things that Native Americans would smoke in a peace pipe was mullen. It's got a very calming effect when smoked. There's no high or anything like that to it. It's very, very mild. But you can also smoke the leaves, and use it kind of like a thermocell, and it'll also help deter mosquitoes and other bugs and stuff like that. But yeah, mullen for hunting. If you're hunting somewhere where there's a lot of mosquitoes, mullen grows just about everywhere in the country that I've been. You usually see it growing in the ditch, and it's one of those plants when you start looking for it, you start seeing it everywhere.
It grows straight up, right? And then you can see the seed heads, and a lot of times you see birds actually attached to the top of it, like red-winged blackbirds and stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah, even big birds can land on it. I mean, it can get pretty stout. The bigger plants. The stalk can get over an inch in diameter. So it's just like a wood stalk, but it doesn't grow till the plant's second year, and then after that it grows every year. So you're gonna harvest the stalk, and another one will pop up in its place.
Oh, so it's like asparagus.
Sure.
Asparagus does that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And I think there's a picture of it on our Instagram, on Survive the Hunt's Instagram. You find some in Oklahoma? You found some in Oklahoma outside a hotel or something like that?
Yeah, I was road tripping through Oklahoma for work, and in Ohio.
Wow, I got all those details right. That's pretty good. That was a while ago.
I'm impressed. A little stalkery of you. No, it was I don't know, early summer or maybe even late spring. I was trucking through Oklahoma, and it was growing a lot better there than it is here in Ohio. And I pulled into the hotel, and the field next to me probably had like 50 mullen stalks growing. And I walked in, the hotel manager's like, "Hey, who owns that field?" He's like, "It's a hotel property." I said, "Cool. Can I go pick a bunch of plants?" He's like, "Yeah, man, have at it." So I picked them. We hung out for a little bit, and I showed them kind of what I did with them. But yeah, I had a whole truck bed full of mullen on the way home. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Could you, again, I've never held it, so I don't know, but you said it works from bows. Could you see it as an arrow source?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could for
Primitive, obviously.
Yeah,
Like
for
a
a
fish
light
arrow
enough
or something.
poundage, I could see it.
Okay.
I don't know that it'd have the tensile strength to hold up to, 50 or 60 pounds of bone, or 50 or 60 pounds of bow. But it's pretty strong. I don't know. It might be something worth fiddling with and seeing how it works.
Yeah, I mean, there might be other better options out there. It's just something that came to mind.
That's a good thought. I've actually got a bunch of it, and I might try whittling it down a little bit and shooting it out of my recurve. See how it does.
Yeah, even if you can make like a little fish point or something like that,
Yeah,
a little
sure.
frog spear thing.
Yeah.
But all right, cool. Yeah, I never picked it, never held it. I think I've seen it for sale before in like yuppie bird feeder stores.
It is in yuppie bird feeder stores and anywhere like that hippies are on the road selling herbal remedies and weed on the side and stuff like that. They like to sell mullen because it's something that people smoke. It's very popular with old timers who smoke pipes. They'll mix it with kinnikinnick and tobacco or mullen. It's a good mixture. Just that kind of calming, relaxing effect, I guess. I don't know. I haven't smoked it, but that's what all the reviews online say.
Yeah, I've never smoked anything, so. Except last week I smoked a buck.
You did, monster. But no, it's one, man. Google mullen, and it's like mullen's like a plant that when I'm trying to teach people how to identify plants and what plants to use, mullen's one that it's everywhere, but nobody's ever seen it before. So you show somebody what a mullen plant is, and then you tell them, "Hey, on your way home from work today, look on the side of the road and count how many mullen stalks you see growing." And they're like, "Man, I saw 150 mullen stalks on the way home, and I never seen that plant before." You don't see it until you're looking, but it's a great plant to teach people exactly how many resources are actually out there when you know what you're looking for. It's really good to drive that point home.
Sweet. I am out of plants.
It didn't take long. All right. Well, we'll go back kind of to, we talked about milkweed and cattail, and I actually had cattail on here, not for the medicinal uses, but actually for the wind direction, like you said. But one benefit that cattail has over milkweed, any guesses?
It's a little more water resistant, a little more waterproof.
You got it. I'm proud of you. That's it. No, I'll just stop you there before you guess anymore. Yeah, that's it. Cattail does not absorb water. Milkweed does absorb water. So if you get a milkweed pod that's out in the field and it's rainy, if that pod's cracked at all, that milkweed can absorb the water and it won't float. Or it won't float in the air. If you find an actual cattail, even in a downpour, I mean, you can dunk a cattail underwater, pull it out and break it, and it's going to have dry pods in there. Yep. If checking the wind direction's a necessity. So.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of anyone using cattail heads as like a down?
No.
For like heat insulation? I don't know. It seems like it'd take a lot of them, but.
Yeah, but I mean, usually where they're growing, there are a lot of them. So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just a thought.
Sense. It's a great spark catcher. It's like ultra.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's a great fire start. Yep, definitely.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm gonna stick then. We'll keep going on my list of plants. Then we got how much time we got left in this episode, Billy?
We're at 50 minutes or so.
All right. Well, we'll end it on. No, we're not gonna end it on this one. We're gonna do two more. We're gonna go with plantain as my next one. I know. That's the look that I want to see. Billy's raising his eyebrows.
Wait, isn't it like a banana?
Well, there is a plantain that is like a banana. But if you follow us on social media, a couple months ago, I did a front yard pharmacy series where we pick like 10 plants that just grow in everybody's front yard. And we talked about some of the medicinal uses of them. And plantain is one of those plants that grows in just about every driveway in America. If you have a gravel driveway.
Isn't it? Oh, wait, hold on. Are you talking about purslane?
No, I'm not talking about purslane. I'm talking about plantain. It's very different. You
Okay.
need to go back on our social media and look at the front yard.
Hey, I got Oklahoma.
That is good. Yeah, this is pre-Oklahoma too. But no, yeah, plantain, it's a broadleaf plant. It grows flat. Usually the leaves, there's a lot of different kinds of plantain, but for the most part, the medicinal values are about the same. A broadleaf plant usually grows in a circular pattern, and plantain is great if, I guess backing up, one of the best uses I like for plantain in a hunting scenario is for poison ivy, mosquitoes, and ticks. Okay. Almost anywhere that poison ivy grows, plantain grows very nearby it. If you find yourself coming in contact with poison ivy, wash it off, but you can take plantain, put it in your mouth. You usually rinse it off first, but put it in your mouth, chew it up, and make a paste out of it, and just hold that over the spot of your skin that got exposed to poison ivy. And it's been my experience that almost every time I will not have poison ivy come up in that spot. If you do have a poison ivy rash, you can do the same thing with plantain, and it's better than calamine lotion. It's better than alcohol. It's better than anything store-bought that I've ever put on a poison ivy rash. Just chewing up that plantain, sticking it on there, sometimes wrapping a little bandage or something, swap it out every now and then.
So it must have a degreasing or an oil break. It must do something to break down the oil.
Probably. I don't know. On a chemical level, I don't know how it works. It very well might. Mosquito bites the same way though. If you've got a bunch of mosquito bites, or you've got one that's really bothering you, you can take that plantain, press it on there, hold it on there, bandage it up for a while, a day or something. And usually that bite's going to go away.
So it's got to have. I like the chemical side of things, right?
Right.
So it's got to have an antihistamine property to it.
It does have an antihistamine property, yes.
Because if it's working on mosquito bites and it's working on poison ivy rash that you already have, the reason those things itch is because of the histamine buildup. So it's got to have an antihistamine, and it probably has a degreasing oil, an oil-based something that's going to break down the oil that lessens the effect that the urushiol, or whatever, however you pronounce it, that's the actual urushiol. Do you know how to actually say it?
No, I don't.
It's something like that.
The itchy
basically
stuff.
That's the itchy. That's what makes your skin break out. Yeah. So, no, that's interesting. I'll definitely have to go back into our social and actually I could find it and see it, because I'm sure it's all over my house too.
Oh yeah, no, I guarantee it. I have yet to be like in somebody's yard and not been able to find plantain when I'm looking for it. I mean, it just grows. It's just a normal yard weed, but it's everywhere in the woods as well. The different kinds of plantain. The other thing for me that I've used it for recently is, I had Lyme disease a couple of years ago, and it was just awful. It's really good on tick bites. If you pull a tick head out, just to put that stuff on there and draw out whatever nasties get in there from that tick. You never can really truly prevent it, and there's a lot of monitoring stuff that I'd recommend if you did get bit by a tick, but that's something in the field that you can find real quick, have on you, and treat a tick bite with, and start working that thing before it gets out of hand. So I can't say for sure that works, but I can say for sure that anywhere I've had a tick bite, I've put plantain, I've not had a bullseye rash from that. So,
oh, that's good.
Yeah, I mean it's something. It's not the most common thing in the world anyway, but it's certainly a use. But all right, last plant. Are you ready? I feel like this one flew by. I'm getting too excited about plants now in my old old age. I feel like we need to talk about a lot of killing stuff in the next episode.
Is it purslane?
It's not purslane, Billy. Purslane is in the Front Yard Pharmacy series, though, that you can find on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I hate it. It grows in my garden. It's super annoying. I just pick it and put it in salads.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's one of those. That's kind of the fun thing with that whole Front Yard Pharmacy thing. It's like stuff you can't get rid of. It's just cope with it and find a way to use it. But another one that is actually in that series that I didn't even put this together until just now is white pine. And white pine kind of goes back to our vine. But have you ever made a licking branch before for deer hunting?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So if you find a white pine branch, so white pine, easily identified, it's got pine needles, obviously, not the little fir needles, but it's got long pine needles, and they only grow in groups of 5. You might find one with 4, 3, or 1 fell off, but you'll never find it with 6, and you'll find a bunch of little clusters of 5 pine needles. So that's how you identify it. But take and cut you off a branch about 5, 6, 7 foot long, trim off everything but maybe the last 4 or 5 tassel-y branches on the end, and hang that out over a field, and you'll have the best whitetail scrape on your entire property over a white pine licking branch.
Absolutely works. Done it multiple times.
Yep. Yeah, you guys got a lot of white pine up there too, don't you?
Loads. If it's not cedar, it's white pine.
Yeah. Yeah, white pine's something, I've got guys that have hunted with me from out of state before, and they've actually cut my white pine branches to take home with them where they don't have white pine because they like to use it so much. But it just holds. It's not a real leaky tree with the sap. It doesn't leak a lot through the actual needles, but it holds deer scent really well. It's soft. It doesn't poke.
It leaks a lot if you cut it. When you cut it, it leaks.
Well, it leaks from where you cut it, but it doesn't leak from the end that the deer are actually.
Yeah, because you can't hunt a white pine and not come out sticky.
No. But no, white pine, if you want to try something fun in the woods this year, or even maybe something you're not going to hunt over, just cut down a white pine branch, set it up about 4 or 5 feet off the ground, and throw a camera on it and watch all the whitetail activity on it. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, you don't have to, I guess I do scrape the ground, but that's just because I feel like I need to, but you don't. You don't. It's kind of like, goes back to the vine. It's so visually stimulating that they just, he's like, oh, I gotta go there. I gotta, I just gotta, I gotta. And it does really, really work.
It does. It's that, and you're right about the visual thing. Like I've used a bunch of those Hodag licking sticks. Have you seen those? It's like a spring that goes in the ground, and then you put a sapling in it, and the deer come and lick it.
Okay, I've seen something like that. I saw something that had like fake leaves on it, and they were so bright orange.
That's buck stick.
Okay, that's a different thing.
It's a different thing. So buck stick is, I've only ever used it one time, and I had decent results on it. But buck stick is more like hanging a vine. Like it's a bunch of artificial stuff that a deer can rub his face on and leave scent. A licking stick, or like the Hodag style stick, is something that I take that stick and put it somewhere that a tree shouldn't be. So if I've got a food plot or a bean field or something, I'll stick that sucker right in the middle of it, and it just draws the deer into that spot.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The visual thing of it, because man, them big food plots or big ag fields, you can't get a deer in front of a camera. They just do their own thing all day.
Right. Yeah, you basically give them a destination.
Yep. So.
All right, well, that's pretty much going to wrap up plants. We covered plants. We didn't really get too hardcore into the medicinal stuff. Jake's got a wealth of knowledge when it comes to that, and it really does deserve. That might be a better thing in video.
It is. Too. It's a better video thing. Like there is some cool stuff you can talk about with it, but really, it's really a show and tell thing more than just a tell and tell thing.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely think the more we do these episodes, it seems we're coming up with ideas for videos, right? Like,
yeah,
I still need to make my saddle video, and then you got that, and then there's we could make a Vine video, we can do all kinds of stuff. So speaking of videos, if someone wants to watch any of our video content, if they're listening to the podcast episodes, we do have a YouTube page, and each one of these episodes does go onto the YouTube page. We do video as well as audio, so you can kind of see us if you really want to or whatnot. But there's going to be a lot of other good content on those pages as well. So I videoed my hunt. We're putting a video together with that, with my buck from last week. I like saying my buck as if you guys don't know. But yeah, and I plan on to keep videoing throughout the year. So and Jake's been doing the same as well. So big things coming over there. I think that's going to be a good source of entertainment for you guys.
Yeah, for sure. And, it seems like anytime we do these Plantain episodes, we get kind of a different audience than normal.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Which is kind of cool. So if you're new and you're just listening to this for the plant stuff, please be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, and leave us a comment. Some kind of plants you like to use for deer hunting, maybe something we didn't talk about, something we didn't cover, or something you just look for, the first plant you look for when you're in a woods or survival situation. We'd love to hear it, and always like to get to reply to the comments and have a conversation about it.
Yeah, not only that, like, we're willing to learn too. So, especially if you have something in your neck of the woods that we don't overhear or whatnot, when it comes to the plant stuff, obviously I'm kind of a rookie or a newbie. I don't eat anything from the woods that I didn't kill. Basically, like I don't like mushrooms, so that's not an issue. So I don't even really care for morels. Everyone freaks out about them, and I'm like, you're just ruining my turkey hunting. So that's not really ever been an issue for me. But I do garden, so next spring we can talk more about that, and more we're more than just a hunting show. I want people to realize that we talk about the survival stuff. We talk about we've done preparedness and homesteading, and we got a lot more plans to expand on that type of stuff too. Right now, we're kicking off hunt season, so I think that's both kind of on our minds and on our heads right now. But I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's always fun to expand the horizons a little bit.
And if you look at our numbers, you notice that like our like prepper and emergency preparedness episodes are like our highest rated ones, right?
I know, which is so strange. Where's my hunters at, man? We need more support from the hunting community.
Well, I think it may just be well, first of all, we have to get them published every week, obviously. But the other thing is, I think there's not as much opportunity for other podcast entertainment in the emergency preparedness aspect.
No, I agree. That's because a lot of those people are too paranoid to put anything out there on YouTube or Facebook. Right. So.
Yeah. But all right. Well, again, this is going to wrap up this week's show. We thank you guys for listening. There's a lot more you can do than just listening, and make sure you go over and hit the socials. Just do it. Instagram, Facebook, Survive the Hunt, YouTube, Survive the Hunt. Just look up Survive the Hunt everywhere you go. Right?
You got it. See you guys next week. Go Buckeyes.
And go Blue.